Since we have some of our audience are secular people, so I'm going to use some secular examples just to get to the point of understanding the concept of annulment. Those who study art history, we're going back to the early 16th century in England. Henry VIII. So the story of Henry VIII, he was one of the two sons of Henry VII. His older brother, Arthur, was the one who had all the capability to be the next king. He learned diplomacy, he learned war, he learned all they need to be the next king. Henry, however, he was good in sports. He was a well-known tennis player. He chasing the wrong people sometimes in his early youth. And then all of a sudden what happened is Arthur passed away and Henry was forced to be the king. And the problem is, in England, in order to be a king, you need to be married. And arranged marriage was made with the surviving wife of Arthur, which was Catherine of Aragon. She married Arthur, and then what?
Yibum.
Right. Yibum, right? So now Henry was forced to marry someone who's older than him. And another bad part in his eyes, they do not have a son, but they have a daughter, Mary. So it's another thing that he wasn't so happy with. And he met someone younger, the daughter of one of the ambassadors, whose name is Anne. And he was in love with her. And the problem is, it was the time of a huge conflict between the Protestant and the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church, with all the Renaissance, with Martin Luther and all the Renaissance that were involved, now the conflict expresses in such a way because Henry was born to a Catholic family and he could not divorce Catherine, and what he tried to do is try to get annulment from the Pope, right? So what did he do? He sent an emissary to Rome with a big chunk of gold, which always help, right? And he said, look, since I'm the King of England, I seek annulment to divorce Catherine and marry Anne. And especially since Anne was in advanced pregnancy, so there's a problem. The only issue is the one who ruled the world at that time was the emperor, famous Charles V, who was in Spain, and he sent a response to Rome. And how he sent the response and how he knew about it, Catherine told him, right? He was the nephew. So he sent the response to Rome, he sent an army. And he basically not only attacked the Vatican, he arrested, put the Pope in jail. And he said, well, Henry, is no annulment. It's not going to happen. And for those who are familiar with art history, the end of the story was very interesting. Henry saw that there's no future. He just drove out the entire Catholic Church from England, and he built a new church that is called the Church of England. And now we have a problem because he need to appoint someone with two qualifications. One, someone who, in his view, closest to God. Second one is someone who makes sure that Catherine will be divorced, and who is better than himself. So he appointed himself as the head of the new Church of England. He divorced Catherine, and it was a few days before Anne delivered the new baby. But again, he had another disappointment, that the baby was, it's a girl. So as much as he was disappointed, the end of the story was that this was Elizabeth I, who ruled over England more than very successful 40 years. And here we are with the subject of annulment. So what we're going to discuss today is how far we go with annulment especially annulment that involve with people that don't mean the annulment. They meant something else. For example, we're going to discuss a situation that the mother said to her daughter, she was unhappy with certain behavior, and she said, I disinherited you, period. And then she come before the rabbis and she wants to give something to her daughter before her passing. And the question is, how you open the door for regret and give something to her daughter. The issue is that sometimes the manner of negotiation between people is a manner of, you said something, he or she said something, you meant this, you didn't mean that. So that's called in Ivrit, in Hebrew, en piv velibo shavim. You meant one thing and you don't mean another thing. You have a different intent than what you express in your mouth. So we are about to begin the third chapter on Tractate Nedarim, which is the beginning of this session is the page 20b on the bottom of the page. Arba'a nedarim hetiru chachamim. So usually the Ran explains that when someone committed some vow, they go before the sage for annulment. But there are situations, as we said, that en piv velibo shavim, the heart and the mind, it's not the same place. So this the four different categories that the rabbi permitted annulment without going before a erudite, expert sage. One, nidrei zeruzim. You have some type of motivational nedarim, manner of vow, that he just make it in order to convince, for example, his fellow to accept his view. Venidrei havai, havai meaning that one who make this vow use a language of exaggeration, or it's something that is well known that it's not true. So that's again, you don't need annulment. 3, venidrei shgagot, and if someone make a neder as a mistake, or the condition, the stipulation is based on something that was unwittingly, venidrei onasim, and some of the vow that made as a result of something that beyond person's control, or it was a forceful neder. Later we explain in page 27 different circumstances that apply. We go first to the first one. Nidrei zeruzin keitzad. What do you mean a motivational vow? Here you have a negotiation. והיה מוכר חפץ ואמר קונם שני פוחד לך מן הסלע, ועלה אומר קונם שני מוסיף לך על השקל. So here you have a type of negotiation. You imagine you're standing on the line in the post office. You have someone who came from South America, new immigrant, and that fellow wants to buy stamps. So they said to him in Spanish, right, that these 100 stamps is cost, for example, what is it, $5.40 or whatever it is, 50 cents. He says, I have $3. So sorry, it's $5.50. He says, look, if you don't sell it me to for $3, I'm going across the street. So they said, well, go across the street. He says, all right, $4. He says, no, it's going to be $5.50. Okay, $4.50. He says, no, it's $5.50. I'm not going to sell it to you, right? He says, what's wrong with this place, with this country? Something wrong here, right? There is a matter of negotiation that people have. Is a story about the late Rebbe of Bobov, that he went to a bookstore, Jewish bookstore, and the salesperson see that this is a big rabbi, so he went up in the price. He wants a certain book. The guy just overpriced. So the Rebbe was in negotiation with him, back and forth, and eventually paid him a high price. So when they walk out, the assistant asked him, why is that? So the Rebbe explained, look, if I did not negotiate with him, and he's telling me a high, he may figure out that he can get even higher. So I negotiate with him that he should know that what he asking, it's already a high price. So, but the idea is, a manner of merchant is that one said one thing and the other one said the other thing. A friend of mine, after the army service, told me he went to Egypt for vacation. He went with his wife. So they saw a beautiful fur coat, original fur coat. So the guy wanted, like, let's say $100. His wife was ready to give, and he didn't want to sell. And he said to his wife in Hebrew, he said to her, no, you don't understand the culture here. And her husband stood up and he offered him, he says, my wife doesn't know. He offered him 50, and the guy said, no way, and he said 55, and then he went to 95. It was like 10 minutes back and forth. He smoked this nargila while he negotiated with this guy, and eventually they compromised for 90. And he said to his wife, you have to know the culture. The negotiation is part of the pleasure, the daily pleasure. If they don't have this negotiation, they don't enjoy. The day is not a fun day, right? So there are people who have this matter. So here we said, if I prohibited this item upon me, if I sell it less than, in those days the currency was selah, and the purchaser said to him, I prohibited this derivative of joy from this item if I purchase it more than amount of shekel, which is the 2 dinars. 21, שניהם רוצים בשלושה דינרים. That the idea is, in this case, one may assume that both of them want to have the completion of this transaction with what? With the price of 3 dinars. So why? The seller is just make a big to-do over that in order for him to add another, and therefore, since the intent was not to make this manner of vow, the only why they did it is in order, the Ran explained, and Rosh too, it says they want to push each other, they want to push. So the big question is, Dvarim shebalev, this is something in the heart of a person. So it's not considering Dvarim. Why? Because again, in a business, that's part of negotiation. You set a price, the other party set a price, so you compare to a matter of vows. So again, you say that it doesn't have the chalot, the fulfillment of Nedarim or vow. So the Gemara said, Arba'a netarim etiru chachamim. There is a 4 type of vows that the sages dissolve. So we use the first one, Nidrei Zeruzin, the motivational vows. So here we ask a question to whom this Mishnah matched. Amar le Rabbi Abba bar Mama le Rabbi Ami. Amart lan mishmei de Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. Man Tana Yehuda Nesiya. So he said, Man Tana, Arba'a Nedarim, Rabbi Yehuda. So here you should know that the Ritva, the Ran, the Rosh have here a disputation how far you go with Chalot Nedarim. If this is a sincere intent to make as a matter of vow or not. So here we said, Rabbi Yehuda idamar mishum Rabbi Tarfon. Imagine 2 people are walking on their journey, and someone come toward them, and one said, I will commit myself to be Nezirite, that this person we see from afar is so and so. And the other one said, what are you talking about? I commit myself to be a Nazir, that this person is not so and so. In general, as we know, that the matter of Nazir is 30 days. לעולם אין אחד מהם נזיר. So here is based on something in Tractate Nazir, page 32b, that this group of people see someone who is a long distance from them, to argue if this person is so and that person so and so, and they make this type of manner of vow. And the idea is, לפי שלא ניתנה נזירות, אלא להפלאה. That he said that the whole idea of annulment of Nezirut is determined by what? By hafla'ah, which means that you have to say it in a lucid, unambiguous way, that it's clear you meant to say certain things. So Rava Amar afilu teima Ravanan Rava rejected that notion. He said, even you say that the Mishnah follow the sages, the disputous Rabbi Tarfon, and hold that the manner of Nezirut and the manner of Nedarim or vow fulfill, even it was not clear what exactly it was the exceptions. Mikatan Ishnehen Ratsu, you meant to say that the Mishnah hold that these two wanted the 3 dinar, meaning only eventually after the negotiation took place, they agree upon that. They said, Shnehen Rotzin Katane. The text said that they both want, which is the present tense. So here you have a demonstration that they will have been satisfied with the price from the outset and never intended to vow. So again, you see a situation that the vow is not binding. So it's a book called Keren Orah. He asked a question. He said, Vayidar Yaakov Neder lemor. The Torah said in Parshat Vayetze that Yaakov Avinu, right, Elliot? Yeah. He made a vow. Im yeh Elokim imadi, if the Almighty will be with me. Ushmarani, etc., etc., etc. You see by the language of Yaakov, Neder al Tnai, that he made a vow that is conditional. Here you see that it's not. Why we said that this conditional, it's not effective. You see, for example, the story of Amalek. The nation of Israel made condition that if Hashem will help them, they will do so and so, right? Why you make this type of stipulation? So the answer is, the Keren Orah explained that Neder be'et tzara shani. You have to differentiate when someone is in a great stress. And if a person is in a great stress, he make this type of vow, that's different. He is in a great fear. So in that case, in Amalek, in Yaakov Avinu, the person is very sincere, mitkaven, he intended to this matter of vow. So now the Gemara said, Omar leRavina leRavashi, this is a big quandary. Why? Amar lo tfei misela aval amar betzir mishekel nidra veyozer uzinavei. If the negotiation goes to a place that he said, okay, the seller said to the buyer, you make this vow greater than the coin, the currency of seller. And the other party, the buyer, said to him, less than a shekel. So what is this? This is a matter of vow, that you have a full binding, or is just a motivational one that he said? So if it's a motivational, it doesn't have the chalot nedarim, it's not a commitment. Amar lei tanina. We learn page 63b. היה מסרב בחברו שיאכל אצלו, ואמר לו, קונם ביתך שאני נכנס. So 2 guys, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven said to Shimon, come and eat meal by me, right? So Shimon said to him, your house will be prohibited upon me if I enter there. Or tipat sonen shani toem. So he basically commit himself not to do it. מותר להיכנס לביתו ולשתות ממנו צונן, בפני שלא נתכוון, זה אלא לשום אכילה ושתייה, because he doesn't intend only for the eating and drinking a large amount, but did not mean literally that he will not drink anything. But because he said clearly a drop of cold water, אלא משתייניש אחי, הכנה משתייניש, that's the language that people are speaking, you know, it's like a colloquium language, the language that people express. So he basically used exaggeration. The intent was not the literal meaning of his word, right? So they said, Amar Lei, Ravina rejected that notion. He said, 21, be dami. How do you compare the two? גבי צונן צדיקים אומרים מעט ועושים הרבה. החס פיקאו, דילמה פחות מסלע ויותר על שקל כמר, וזירוזינה, ועוד דילמה דווקא כמר ונדרה אבי. So the big question is, how sincere was that person? Right, Dr. Friedman? Right. If the person was in intent that if he's serving and like in the story of Abraham, right? So he invited the 3 strange guests to eat a piece of bread, right? And then Avraham Avinu gave them a big seuda, gave them a big meal. So here the question is, what exactly intend? Or really intend to do it that way, so tibai, which means that you have this inquiry remain. So it's a diyun b'poskim. The rabbi is asking a question. What do you do in the chatzi shiur? You said to someone, I'll not eat a meal by you. So are you allowed to eat mezonos? You're allowed to eat just a little cookie or a slice of cake by him? Or the moment you use the term seuda, it's any food. Most of the poskim hold that if you express yourself in the manner of seuda, you meant to say a meal, a feast, a real full meal. You don't intend a little cookie, and therefore it's not the issue. Anyway, אמר רבי יהודה אמר רב אסי, 4 נדרים הללו צריכים שלא לחכם. He says, with all said and done, when it's come to these 4 type of vows, in our Mishnah, you still have the petition. You go to before an erudite rabbi, a sage, and you seek annulment. It's not abrogated by itself. Why? Because you need an expert to do which called petach. It's a story about the Chazon Ish. You know, before Rosh Hashanah, we have a Talmud Nedarim, right? So we do annulment of vows. So it's Erev Rosh Hashanah, people make the sleeper, people make the whole thing, and then you have, so it's a guy who would daven along, and people don't, so he went to the Chazon Ish and he asked him if he can do annulment. So what do you need to do now? You need to have another person, you need to have 3 people, right? So they went on the street in Bnei Brak, they caught other people, and people who were just observant people who were not so familiar, and they said to make a best deal to make. So when they left, the Chazon Ish said, I want you to know I'm not so happy with this, but I let it go, I didn't want to embarrass the guy. He says, you should know lechatchila, the way it should be done, that people who sit in a Beis Din, in a rabbinic court, even in this matter of annulment before Rosh Hashanah, should be people who knows what it's all about. Right, Dr. Friedman? Right. Because otherwise it's like some type of chucha v'itlula, because these people would not be fitting, and they're sitting there just to sit there, and they have no idea what the annulment is all about, the sincerity and the seriousness of that. Anyway, here you see the idea that it's not annulled by itself. You need to have an erudite, scholars, people who are familiar with the form. The person needs to express his regret. The person needs to find a way to express his regret. If you know that that was the consequences, did you still consider that matter of vow? If you know that that was the effect. כי אמרת כמי דשמואל אמר תני תנא 4 נדרים יתירו חכמים. There is a 4 type of vow that they say annul. ואת אמרת צריכים שלא לחכם. We just said that it wasn't serious and it doesn't seek annulment. And here you tell me what? That you need to go before the sage. So what you meant by that? Rav Yosef Manda Lashmata by Ishlishna. So he said, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Asi. So the truth is, this 4 type of vows doesn't need to have annulment. אין חכם משל להתיר, אלא כאין 4 נדרים הללו. The idea that when you have an erudite sage who sit there and annul the vow, he needs to use the opening for annulment, this type of 4 category, that doesn't resonate, doesn't carry the sincere manner of vow. And the Mishnah teaches that you have these 4 categories, the Rosh said. 4 categories that based on them, the sage can go ahead and annul certain vow. So the Gemara elaborate, and they said, Kasavar en potchin bacharata, you hold that we do not make an opening out of regret, which means you need to have petach, you need to have an opening that if you know that lechatchila at the first pairs, you never make this type of vow. Soon you see examples. Hahu de'ata kamei leRavuna. The person came before Ravuna and he asked for annulment. Amar le liba alach. So your heart was there when you make this type of annulment? So he said, Amar le lo. He said, no, I didn't meant it. So as a result, v'sharyei. So when Ravuna heard that, so he released him from the neder on the basis of his regret. And other stories, all these stories just bring us understanding of this. A person came before Ravuna to annul his vow. If it was 10 people to convince you, to be there, to appease you at that moment, which means that Ravuna hold that only when you have an utterance of very sincere regret, charata gmura, that's the only way to annul it. So, Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, my teacher in Kol Torah Yeshiva from many years ago, derived from this Gemara a proof that you need to have a very clear charata brura. Because usually what happened, this person come and express something that happened 5 years ago, right? So he says, how did the judges judge? So he said, En lo ladayan ela ma she'einav ro'ot. The judge can judge only according to his eyes, to his understanding at this very moment. So you're asking a person, you understand what you understand, you try your best under this circumstance, that's the proof. Tanya, Rabbi Dr. omrim lo le'adam. When a person comes to seek annulment for his vow, lev ze alecha. Do you have your heart in that place? Was this mind with you when you made this type of neder? Im amar la'av matirim oto. If he said no, so you allow him. He said, Rabbi Ishmael ורבי יוסי אומר, משום אביו, אומרים לו לאדם, אילו 10 בני אדם שיפסו רבות הרשעה מנדרת, if it was 10 people who could have appeased you at that time, would you have made the vow? אם אמר לאו מתירים אותו, if he said no, so they dissolved it. So you see here, there's a big disputation among the rabbis, we don't have the time, if you need to have charata brura, if it has to be a very clear, lucid regret or not. So now we have the Akronam Siman, Asi ve'Elazar Yochanan ve'Yanai. Hahu de'ata lekamei Rabbi Asi, the first story. Amar lekadut tahit. So he said to him, do you really regret? Amar le lo. So he said, you mean to say that I not regret? For sure, in other words, definitely, v'sharyei. So it's he annulled it for him. How that Rabbi Elazar Amar le ba'id Neder. Someone came before Rabbi Elazar and he said to him rhetorically, do you regret? He said no. Amar le ilu lo margizin li lo ba'inan klum. He said to him, if they had not angered me, I would not have wanted anything. Amar le teheh keba'it. He said to him, let it be like you want, and the vow is dissolved. Another story, listen to this. Hahu iteta de adrata levrata. It was a certain woman who declared a neder against her daughter. She said that my daughter cannot derive any benefit from my estate. Atai lekamed Rabbi Yochanan. She came before Rabbi Yochanan to annul that vow. Amar la ilu aveyadat de amran megerata halach divrat. So do you know that the neighbors will say about your daughter 22, אילו לא חמת בה אימה, מלינדה עזיבה, her mother had her mother not seen in her matter that were an abandonment, which means the Rosh, the Ran said that it was a matter of zima, matter of inappropriate, licentious behavior. So therefore, bichdi lo adarta. So they said, mi adarta, so you really declare a neder against her. So because you make this type of statement, people say bad-mouthing your daughter, and they figure out that she was involved, etc., in inappropriate act. Do you realize that? Amra le lo, she said, no, I will not have declared this type of vow. So Vesharya, so Rabbi Yochanan allowed it. So here is the Meiri said that's the total opening, total petach. So you can prove from here that Rabbi Yochanan hold that you need to have petach and charata is not sufficient. So the bed in Yerushalayim, one time a lady came and she said she commit herself, extraordinary commitment, not to metaltel, not to carry on Shabbat. Even in Yerushalayim you do have Eruv, but she wants to behave in a certain level of piety and she committed herself. But then she realized that it's too much for her and she cannot follow. And she seek annulment from the Bet Din. So the Bet Din have a session before they dissolve it. They said, look, someone go to a lecture that he heard from the orator, from the teacher about not speaking Lashon Hara, or not doing things, and he is very enthused and he commit himself. And then he have nisayon, then he have a challenge and he failed to follow that. Why is that? So they said there's a point that the person get some type of enthusiasm, itorerut, but then when they have this trial, heavenly trial, tribulation, they'll not. So one of the ideas to have the ani mumchim, to have an expert, is what do you need to have in order to annul vow? What do you need to have in order to have a regret? They allow her in that case, but basically, again, in order to seek annulment, you need to have an expert to annul the vow, and that's only a erudite sage.
לשולוים, מלאכי השולוים, מלאכי